Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of EDC 516. We've spent the last few weeks talking about some of the theoretical and pedagogical understandings of teaching language and teaching multilingual learners. And now we're moving into some of the beginnings of our methods conversations, starting with planning for language. This is one of the most important topics we'll cover in this course, as it really lays the foundation for how we should think about the ways that we use language in everyday instruction and the ways we can really intentionally and strategically plan for language supports for multilingual learners. To begin, we're going to discuss the question, what is academic language? So we'll spend a little bit of time unpacking that together. I've provided some of my own thoughts around, what academic language is and how we can approach defining it and operationalizing it in our classrooms. And then you'll take a look at a chapter by Gottlieb and Ernst Slavitt, where they provide some additional framing for thinking about the different dimensions of academic language. So I'm hoping you'll come away from that reading and from some of the discussion in this section with a deeper understanding of what we mean by that term and how we can support students in learning how to use language in meaningful ways at school. Once we've laid that foundation, we're going to dive right into content and language objectives. So we'll talk about what content and language objectives are, why we write them, why we include them in our planning. And there's a few different resources to support you in that. There's a mini lecture where I introduce content and language objectives. We have a chapter we'll be reading from the SIOP book, which some of you may be familiar with if you've taken EDC 515, Making Content Comprehensible for English Learners, the SIOP model. And there's a great chapter that provides a nice overview of language objectives, including what they are and how to write them. And a short video clip from Dr. Cynthia Lugren, where she talks a little bit about why language objectives matter. From there, we'll move into the nitty-gritty of actually writing those objectives. So you'll watch a short video where I talk about some important considerations for writing content objectives, and then another where I go into a step-by-step process for how to write language objectives. I've been doing this work now for many years and have worked to hone kind of a step-by-step framework that I've found helpful in my work with educators to give you some real strong ideas for how to go about planning for language in your own classroom. There are resources available, such as some language objective functions and forms and a word bank, a handout that includes the key components of what should be included in a language objective that I hope you find helpful. From there, we'll move into talking about standards. So we'll kind of move from the zoomed in look at language objectives that you might use, content and language objectives that you might use in a given lesson, and then back out to think about how those objectives align with standards that you're working to cover across the year for that grade or for the grade that you teach. So I have a video where I kind of unpack what content and language standards are and point you to some of the resources you can use to draw from in your planning. You'll see that I've linked as our final reading, the WIDA ELD Standards Framework from 2020. This is an incredible resource that if you don't already use, I hope you will start using, that organizes language by function, content area, and grade level. So you can really think about what specific features of language you might want to focus on to support your students' academic language development, particularly your multilingual learners. But truly, it's a resource that I think will benefit you for planning for language learning for all of your students. So you'll have a chance to kind of skim through that resource, look specifically at the standards at your grade level, and then we move from all of that great learning around objectives and standards and academic language to discussing and applying. For this week, you're going to be applying your learning through some application activities. So I have created a handout for you that has a few different application activities around objectives and standards. So you'll have a chance to dive into that and think about how you will how you might craft language and content standards for your own students or for students you might teach in the future, and how you might not just the standards, but the objectives that you would create for a given lesson. And then once you've finished that, you'll post it on the discussion board, and there'll be a few questions to answer as you reflect upon your learning from this week and also the process of engaging in this objective writing activity. So that is it. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to engaging with you on the discussion board.